Welcome to Mind Your Wedding Business Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Dennis. In addition to leading the charge at Wedding IQ, I also run Fantasy Sound Event Services, a lighting and entertainment company based in Livermore, California, that I founded over 35 years ago. Each week on this podcast, you'll hear thought-provoking and empowering interviews with wedding professionals who have found success in the industry. If you're a business-minded wedding pro who loves love, but also cares about their bottom line, buckle up and get ready to learn from a new industry expert each week. All right, welcome to another episode of Mind Your Wedding Business. We're here with the one and only Ariana Teachey. Ariana is here to talk about today about virtual assistants because she is a virtual assistant. But before we jump into that, Ariana, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how we got you here today?
So I have been in the wedding industry since I was in college. So it is something that I live and breathe for my whole career, basically, which is, I can't get away from it. I feel like that's most people who start in the wedding industry. You get sucked in.
It's like a drug.
Yes. In a fun industry. So it's like, why leave?
Yeah.
So I worked in a bunch of different capacities in the wedding industry. I did PR. I worked at a venue for a year. I worked at a wedding magazine and did a wedding show with them as well. So I did dabbled in a bunch of different things. But ultimately, I like behind the scenes. I like helping wedding professionals, all of you wedding pros who handle engaged couples. Just hats off, all the claps for you because it is stressful. So about 2.5 years ago, I started my virtual assistant business and knew right away when I was going to start that I wanted to help wedding professionals. That was going to be who I was reaching out to. I started my business and get to work with a bunch of wonderful people like yourself.
I was going to see if you were going to say if I was wonderful or not, because I know sometimes we're a pain in the butt on our side as well. So
no, never a pain in the butt.
Yeah, you say. All right. All right. So as we jump in, Ariana, why don't you tell us what a virtual assistant is and does, and how does it differ? How is it different from someone that does like social media, marketing, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different types of virtual assistants who kind of hone their skills in what they are passionate about. For me, I'm a type A. I like to be organized. I like to be efficient as possible, and see my clients thrive and be able to take some of their time back to have some self-care, to be able to be with their families. That's kind of why I like being a virtual assistant. But they're really there to help you with those menial tasks that you're like, if I have to do this one more time, I'm going to scream. You all need to be working in your business to be able to further it down the road. You don't need to be doing those tiny tasks of, making sure you're getting all of those wedding photos from all of the wonderful photographers, or, culling 3,000 photos down to just like the 50 that you probably need. So those small tasks, to be able to hand those over is really helpful. I mean, there's just a bunch of different things the virtual assistants can do. There are some who do social media, who do marketing, but honestly, they usually stop calling themselves a virtual assistant then and start calling themselves like marketing management.
I love it. All right. So let's dive in. What kind of tasks, projects can a virtual assistant, help with in the wedding industry? Let's get specific.
Yeah. So different tasks like calendar management, making sure that you have all of your canned emails in one place. Do you have SOPs set up? If you're going to hand over the task to someone in your company, if you're expanding your company, adding on a new planner, adding on an associate photographer, are they going to know what to do? How do they get that contract to someone? What do they do during their intake meetings? Those kinds of things. What's the SOP on how we get from point A to point B? So that's something that's really important, and that I think gets missed a lot in companies, especially because a lot of wedding industry businesses are small businesses. So sometimes it's like, well, I only had to do that like twice. And it's like, yeah, you did it twice, So you still were taking that time away from yourself when you could have trained them quicker by saying, here's an SOP, here's a Loom video that walks you through the process. So those are some kind of tasks that I take on. Projects I've helped with podcast management, reaching out to guests, making sure, that they've scheduled, that they've signed their contracts, those kinds of tasks as well. And then there's some people who have no organizational system whatsoever, and we try to get them organized, whether that's Airtable, which I really, really love, or if they're a Google Docs person, that kind of thing. And I think I've already mentioned it before, but also reaching out to photographers to make sure that you're getting, the photos so that you can use them on your website, on your social media, updating those, all those profiles that you have across the internet, making sure all that's up to date too. So yeah, those are a few things, but it kind of runs
I
the
was going to say,
gamut.
and I would imagine it's different for everybody you work with, like
Hmm.
we all, like what you do for us is going to be different than what you do for, whoever down the road, so it's just kind of, so that's probably where it makes it fun for you, like you're not doing the same task over and over again. You're doing, multiple things. So,
Yeah, and I find too when I get a client, they're hiring me for one thing and then we're working together and I'm like, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing it this way?" Or they're
mm,
talking me through kind of what's going on behind the scenes with their business when we're having a one-on-one meeting and I'm like, "Wait, I can do that task." Like if that especially I see people who are getting like bottlenecked at one thing, they're like, "I can't pick the photos for my website because I'm too close
mm-hmm,
to it." So,
mm-hmm.
and they're telling me like, "Oh, I have to get this done because my web designer needs it." It's like, okay, well, what if I pick, cull it down to like 20 images and you ultimately have that decision on what goes up, but I can take a little bit of that burden away from you so that you're not bottlenecking yourself on
Well,
tasks too.
yeah, and time, and
Hmm.
like you said, we get so close to it that it's nice having fresh eyes that are looking at it differently than we do because we get so fixated on, I think, one eye. Like I really like this one thing, but you're like, whoa, wait. If you look at the whole picture, it's not. It's totally different. So
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So how is a contracted virtual assistant different from an employee?
Yeah. So a virtual assistant is a contracted in, person. It's not an employee. Employee, you can set their hours so they can be, your 9 to 5. They're on the clock for you at specific hours. Where a virtual assistant, you can't dictate what hours they're working as long as they're getting the task done and getting them done in a timely manner. Now you can't take, you know, 2 weeks to do one task.
Yes.
Um, and you do need to be available to your clients. You can't just be like, well, I'm, never available. But a lot of virtual assistants that I've met too work in different time zones. I'm
Mhm.
East Coast, you're, you know,
West
in
Coast.
California. And, I had someone that I met with who was in Jamaica. Like, and there's just different, you can definitely work within different time zones with that. But it really, the difference is that you're not set hours. So that's one thing that I think is the biggest difference there. And normally, when a virtual assistant works, it's like a certain number of hours a month that
Mm.
you have to utilize, and they keep you, in the know of like how many hours they've used. And how many hours you have left. Where an employee, you can just like stack on all of those tasks and that they're going to get accomplished in 1 month. Where with me, if I've gotten multiple tasks, I'll have to, go to them and prioritize like, okay, hey, what is needs to be done right now? And you're coming up on your hours. So we might have to push that to next month. Or
Mhm.
do you want to do 2 more hours this month with me?
Yeah, and that makes sense. I was gonna so you mentioned the time zone. Is it helpful having clients in different time zones? Because we all probably are coming at you differently.
Yeah, I really like having clients in different time zones. I have several who are West Coast like you, and then
Mhm,
several that are more East Coast. So it's nice
mhm.
because then I can adjust my schedule. Like, my East Coast clients, I'm getting them done kind of early in the morning. If I have meetings with them, then I have that time in the afternoon before everybody on the West Coast is hitting their desks, which is kind
Yeah.
of nice. And I'm also a night owl. I have 2 kids, so I work after, after they go to bed. So
Hmm.
it's not too late for everybody on the West Coast at that point. So that's kind of nice too.
No, it's funny, you, and then, I have my goofy sister, Megan Ely, that we both know very well. But like,
Yes.
there'll be times that I'll be like, it's 5 o'clock my time. And I'm like, crap, I shouldn't text her because it's 8 o'clock. And we all know that she goes to bed at 8 o'clock at night. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Yeah.
that the time zone is, I think, a blessing and sometimes a curse, just depending
Yeah.
on what it was. So how can someone know if they're ready or they need to hire a virtual assistant?
I think when you see that you're bogged down and you're frustrated with those little tiny tasks, you're like, I cannot do this one more time, or I'm going to lose it. I think that,
Hmm.
that is a time where you know that you need to pass it on to somebody else. Um, and I also think that you have to be in a place to know that you can let go of those things.
Mm,
Because I have had people before where super sweet, nice people, and they say like, okay, I want you to do XYZ, but they won't let go of the reins. So
mm,
they haven't come to the terms with, okay, I'm ready to hand this over to somebody.
hmm,
Especially if you've never had a virtual assistant before. I work with people who have had virtual assistants before. Um, and they're totally fine with handing over, a little bit of the keys to the kingdom.
hmm.
But it's definitely a little bit harder for those people who have never had one before, because they're having to let go. So I think you need to be in a place where you're really ready to let go of that task, and have someone take it over.
Now, do you think it's harder for someone that maybe never even had an employee, and so it's even more difficult for them to let go?
Yes. Definitely way, way harder for them to let go because they've never had to let go of absolutely anything. They've
Yeah.
been a one man, one woman show for so long that for them to let that go, it feels personal. And I get that because
Hmm.
I own a business and I am a one person show at this point. So, I understand that. It's hard to let go. It's your company.
Yeah. Well, and wonder too if, like, do people feel like they won't represent them well, or like, I think there's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot of trust building that has to go into what you do as well.
Yeah, and I think that leads into like when you're looking for a virtual assistant, what you should be looking for. There definitely needs to be a level of trust with that person, a level of connection, and an understanding of your company and what your company's goals are, um, and just what you stand for as a company. You need to have that aligned with your virtual assistant, because in some ways they are an extension of your company. Even if they're not front facing, they're not emailing for you or anything like that, they're doing things behind the scenes that are in your brand voice. um, they're ultimately representing your company in different ways, so you really do need to have a trust and an understanding. And I think a lot of, I've seen virtual assistants in, you know, their different industries and things like that. I think one thing that I think a lot of clients that come to me like is that I do have a wedding background. So I
Mm,
understand that, you all are, it's busy season. You all are not in the office on a Friday and you're probably not in the office on a Monday.
hmm.
Because you're on site, you're putting stuff up on a Monday, you're either breaking stuff down or you took that day because you don't get a weekend. So, I I work on a weekend, so I might email you on a weekend. I don't expect a response, but
Yeah.
there's I understand kind of how the behind the scenes work and that there's going to be your busy season where I might have to follow up a few more times because you guys are bogged down, but doing it in a nice and a kind way, knowing where you guys are at, in your business day to
Well,
day.
and it sometimes too is like, I feel like us in the wedding industry, we deal with deadlines, and we're good at deadlines. And so just having someone like yourself to be accountable to, like, hey, in order for me to move this whatever XYZ project or this,
Mhm.
task forward, I need you to sign off on ABC, and just sometimes I think that helps us in the wedding industry. It's like, oh, I'm paying you money and I need you to make sure, and it kind of keeps us kind of going. But it's like, also then you mentioned too, like on, Mondays and Fridays and days that we're busy, you could get a virtual assistant maybe to be responding to your inquiries or something that therefore when you come back to work on a Tuesday, you're not behind, there's
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff you could do. So you got my mind
Yeah.
going,
Yeah,
which is crazy
definitely.
because, I might put you to work more. All right. All right.
That's what I'm here for. So
That's right, girl. All right. So how can a wedding professional make the transition seamlessly when working with a virtual assistant? Like, how
yeah,
can we help you help us?
yes. So I think going in knowing at least like 3 to 5 tasks that you want to hand over to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like we talked about before, that you're willing to hand over to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really key. If you go in and you're not sure why you even need one, but you think you need one, because I have had people come to me like that. They're like, well, I think I need one. And I'm like, well, why do you need one? Like, what are you
Mm-hmm.
wanting that person to take on? So you have to know kind of very specific things that you want them to take on. There can always be like oh, here, can you do this one-off task? But there needs to be set tasks that they're accomplishing every month for you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really important to know what those things are. It's also really important to have open lines of communication.
Mm-hmm.
I do an onboarding call where, we go over everything, but then, always, being open to, like, you and I, we meet twice a month because that's what works, for us to keep the lines of communication open. And I think also coming to them and letting them know exactly, as a wedding professional, how you like to operate. Um, I've
Mm-hmm.
worked with people who have ADD or have ADHD, and it's like, okay, well, for me, I need to communicate through, Voxer, and like that's
Mm-hmm.
easier for me, and I'm more than willing to adapt to that kind of
Mm-hmm.
situation. Or I need you to put it in ClickUp, but then I also need you to send me, it needs to go to an email too. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, you know, you really need to come to them too with what works best for you when it comes to communication and tasks, task planning. I think that really kind of makes a difference. And you also need to have some level of understanding of how you're going to train them to do those tasks, because as much as you can hand something off, if you maybe that's not a task you did before. Maybe it was an employee and you're going to pass it off to a virtual assistant. Then you need to make sure that that virtual assistant talks to that employee, or you have some sort of training for them to be able to do that. Because if you come to them and go, oh, well, Sally did it for years, but she's gone, I don't really know how to do it. It's like, that's, you know, I have to see how you do that process. So if you can have a Loom video, if we can set on a Zoom call and I can record it, and then we can, I can do that task several times to make sure that it's correct. And then we can ultimately create you that SOP,
Yeah.
so that we have that moving forward and that there's continuity um, with
Well,
that.
and I feel like you're just setting up a person to fail if you can't help them help you. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So that really makes the smoothest transition. And also doing it at a time uh, that you have the time to do those things. Because, if you're setting in the middle of your busy, fall season, you don't have the time, like,
no.
to bring someone on to try to take on those tasks that you're drowning in at that moment. Unfortunately, you should maybe push that off as much as that's you're drowning. And I know that
Well,
sounds
yeah.
bad, but
No.
do it at a time where you can really take that time, um, to make sure that that transition goes well, I think is
Well,
important.
that makes complete sense because I think a lot of people too need to look at, we need to be planning, like in our slow time. Everyone has slow time. The one thing when I was WIPA president, I got to learn is everyone's wedding season is completely different across the country.
Yeah.
And Like we're almost year round where we do get busier, spring through the end of fall because all the outdoor venues come online, where all our indoor venues that have indoor sites still continue to go year round, but it's not as busy. So we need to take the time that we're not as busy to, look at projects. What do we need help, and really evaluate. And I think that's the time to do it. Like you said, it gets to be too late if you're in the thick of it. And it's like, how are you going to get someone to help you get out of that? It's going to be really difficult. So, all right. You mentioned a lot of different tech. So how is it, you got to meet everyone where they work, I'm assuming. So is it difficult to learn or are you becoming an expert at all these different like project management programs and all that kind of stuff? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so I like to meet them where they are at. So I've used Monday, I've used Boxer, I use Slack. I will text with some people. Some people, we just have to have an understanding of if it is after hours, I might not text immediately back because I do have two children. So there's,
and for the record, I only text you when when it's 911. So.
And usually it's at like 10 a.m. on a weekday. So it's like, of course, like that's a normal time. So that's not a weird time. So I think that meeting them where they are. So those are some things that I've used. I've used Monday and ClickUp and Airtable and Honeybook, the backside of Dubsado, all of those, different programs. Trello a little bit too. Not my favorite, but I've been in it. But then ultimately, the way I keep myself organized is that I have to put all of that into a task system for myself too. So that's kind of how I keep organized with all the different places that I have to be.
And then, so just out of curiosity, because I love tech, is there one that you love the most that you work with? And one that you like? You said Trello, not your favorite. Is there,
Trello's not my favorite. ClickUp is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Monday is also really, really good. But I would say ClickUp is my absolute favorite.
And is that what you use for your business as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I use. And that's what I've set up a few clients to use too. So to keep them on task. So that would be my favorite for sure. It's so easy to set up and it's visual, which I think a lot of wedding professionals like because you're creatives. So you want
we
something
like pretty in the wedding industry.
Yeah, we want something pretty. We want something a little color coded. Kind of simple, user friendly situation. So that would be my favorite for sure.
Yeah. All right. So
mobile.
You
can
mobile.
Do it on your, you can get it on your phone. So and an app, and the app's pretty good. So that's also another thing.
That's usually a selling point for me. It's like it's mobile, great, done. Hire me because you got to because. Like you brought up ADHD or ADD, like most of us in the wedding industry do struggle with that, me included. And if I don't write it down or think about, like put it down right then and there, I'm going to forget. And so that's why I usually love stuff that's mobile because then I can put it right into my phone. Then it pops up in my desktop and my laptop and all that different stuff as well. So.
Yeah, I find it really helpful because when I had other jobs before, I would, be that person that like 10 o'clock at night, I'm thinking before I go to bed, I'm like, oh, I got to do X, Y, Z. And I'm just like emailing myself a list.
Yeah.
Which works, but it's nice to have it somewhere where I can check it off.
We do like a good list that we can check as well. So,
yeah.
All right. So we've gotten to the point where we really figured out that we need a virtual assistant. So what should a wedding pro be looking for when hiring a virtual assistant?
I think it's really important to look at what their background is and to ask questions of, do you currently have clients? How long have you been in business? And also make sure that they have everything squared away in the background for their own business. Do they have an LLC? Do they have an official contract? How are you paying them through Stripe, through whatever? Because I do think that there are some virtual assistants out there who sometimes do it as a hobby or as a side thing. And it's just important to make sure that people have everything squared away, which I think we all understand, or you all understand being in the wedding industry, is that you all have all those things squared away. You're not just fly by night. So I think that's really important when you're looking for someone. I also think word of mouth, if you can ask people, like, who are you using? I think that obviously that always says a lot. And asking them, like, hey, can I reach out to some of your past clients and see, how you worked with them, or a current client, if you're not familiar with some of the people that they're working with. So I think that's really an important thing to look for. And like we talked about earlier, I think there's a level of trust and a level of connection that you need to see with them from the start. And an openness for communication. Even as, and it's talked about a lot in the wedding industry, kind of your client process is like, what does their client process look like? Is it something that you align with? Are they good with their communication? Are they following up with you if you didn't go ahead and set up a consultation with them? Are they following up with you after, you've met with them with a proposal and all those kinds of things? I think that can show you a lot up front of how they're going to work with you in the future. So,
yeah. Well, and it's funny that you brought up. I don't know why this came to mind, but like for you have an Ariana at Fantasy Sound, email address, and some people think that you're not real, that they're just email. Yeah, that you're like Chat GPT AI girl out there doing. I'm like, because one of our clients, I'm like, no, she's a real person. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And then someone, when they heard that we were working with a virtual assistant, thought that you were a personal assistant and that you like go do my dry cleaning and pick up my kids for me and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, no, she lives in Richmond, Virginia, and she's nowhere near, she could be running dry cleaning or any of that kind of stuff. So it's totally, by working with her allows me time to pick up my kids and and go do my dry cleaning and all that fun stuff. So,
I think, it's kind of like it's an executive assistant, like you would see at a big company in some ways, the same kind of tasks. I'm just not sitting next to you.
Yeah.
That's the big difference.
But no, and I think the biggest thing too is, like you brought up, is you got to be able to have an open line of communication with whoever you're working with. And it's like anything you do is, as long as you that line of open communications there, I think you're going to be successful. It's going to be like a really good relationship going forward. So
I think another thing too, making, what you're looking for in a virtual assistant, it comes down to that trust. Like, you sent that person, even though they're virtual, if you sent that person to a networking meeting on your behalf, like for your company, do you think that they would do a good job? Like, do you think that they would promote your company as well as you would? And they're not going to do it as well as you are because you own it, but like, how are they going to represent your company if they went out into a networking event? I think that's something, because like you said, I have an email for you. So I am writing emails on behalf of Fantasy Sound. I have other clients where I have that as well. So you need to be really comfortable knowing that if they're out in the world, how are they representing themselves and representing you?
Yeah, and I never thought of it that way. And I would be 100% confident that you would represent us very well, just all over the years working with you and different things. Like, I'm like, yep, yeah. Too bad you didn't live closer. We'd be sending you to networking events.
Yeah. I'd be at NACE every month.
There you go. Having fun. All right. So, did we miss anything? I feel like we covered it all.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I don't think so. I think everyone needs to just look at their processes and look what they're doing and where do they need help, especially because right now it is so hard to find people to work for them. I think the one thing too, I think you got to remember is that a virtual assistant, I think, works faster than an employee because they don't get drawn into the minutia of the drama and whatnot that's going on, and whatever it is, like White Lotus just ended, and then we're all talking about White Lotus here at
Yeah.
Fantasy Sound,
Yeah.
so yeah, because you're there working on your own. We do. I will admit, I'm not a Taylor Swiftie, but you are, and the girls are in the office, and so usually our every other week meeting is talking about something Taylor did, but we haven't
Yeah.
talked about Taylor in a while because she's
Yeah.
a little MIA right now.
Yeah, she's hanging out with Travis. Yeah, but that is something, good to remember is that they're not getting bogged down with, things going on in the office or getting pulled in like five different directions. Because when you're in an office, naturally you're gonna be like, hey, did you do XYZ? And it's like, everybody stops. And so
Yeah.
I think that
No.
that is nice to be able.
Good
I'm
point.
just over here in my office in my own little bubble listening to true crime podcasts while I work or Taylor
There you go.
Swift. So
There you go. Hey, we all got to have our little vices, what we do. All right. So I think a good thing to walk away with, a good tip for everyone is just to really go out there and look at their processes and do they need help? And, because I think if you can relieve yourself of some of the processes that you do or some of the business stuff, it'll open up that creative side. And that's where we need to live. Like, I feel like we're more successful when we're working on that creative side of our business more. So, well, all right, girl. Thank you for being here. Before you go, though, I do ask all the guests, what is the favorite? We did find out that you did not like Trello, but what is other than the ones you talked about, do you have a favorite app that you're using right now?
I really, people are gonna probably not love this answer. I like Chat GPT, but
Mm-hmm.
I really like it to keep me organized and block my schedule, which I
Oh,
never thought about until like a couple months ago of helping it block my schedule. So I input all of my clients, how many hours I'm working for those clients, what hours in the day I work. Like, I work 9 to 5 or I have extra hours in the evening, put everything in, it's spit out when I should be working, blocking my schedule for my clients, which was
and
really
that's
cool. So,
crazy.
mhm.
And what did you have to like? Now I'm curious. What kind of prompts did you have to?
I just put that I was a virtual assistant, that I listed all of my clients. I listed the hours per month that I have to work
Mm-hmm.
for them. I listed my schedule is a little weird because like I said, I have two kids and one of them is not in school yet. So I have childcare Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I said I work, 9 to 5 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I work, through a couple hours, like 3 hours Thursday afternoon, work in the evening. I put all of those parameters in there and it spit out exactly the hours that I chunked out time. And that works for me to block my schedule that way. So Chat GPT did that for
Well,
me.
no, that's
So
it's funny. More people I find, like I was telling you earlier when we were on the call. There's a guy. I coach Little League baseball. I love Little League baseball. This is my 17th year coaching baseball, and one of the coaches puts in all the kids' stats and lets Chat GPT pick the batting order. And
yeah.
they're pretty successful. So I was like, maybe I need to have that girl help me do a little bat. So it's amazing the things that we can do, and imagine if you had to do that on your own, how much time would that have taken you to try to block that out? And it was probably done in,
Oh,
seconds.
I did it like 6 months before, but then I
Yeah.
had new clients come on. So I had to go back. I had clients who left, clients who came on. So I had to go back to the drawing board of like, how am I going to, block this time? And I was like, I just need someone to do it for me. So Chat
Yeah.
GPT did and did a
The
good
virtual
job. So,
assistant needs a virtual assistant or an AI
always,
assistant. Yeah.
always, I
Well,
tell
and
you all the time, if I could clone myself,
I know.
which we all feel, but
We all feel that way. So, I just got to make sure you said thank you at the end to her, right? Chat
yes,
GPT.
I
Okay,
told
yeah,
her
because
thank you.
it's very important because when the computers rise up, we want them on our side.
Thank you. Always a thank you. And you did a great job. That's that's what you have to tell them.
Yeah, you keep complimenting them because I feel like
Mhm.
they do appreciate that. All right, Ariana, it's been a pleasure. How can we or our guests get in contact with you? Or
Yeah. So my website is just arianateachey.com. And then I am on Instagram and it's arianateachey.virtualassistant. And those are the kind of two places that I mostly hang out. So yeah.
All right. We will be sure to put all your information in our show notes, and we can't thank you enough for being here today.
Yeah, thank you.
Folks, I hope everyone goes out there and really evaluates and sees how a virtual assistant can help their business, because you've been extremely helpful to us, and we do consider you part of the team. So it's kind of funny, even though you live so far away from us.
Yeah.
We very much look forward to all the help that you give us. So thank you so much. All right. Thanks for everyone for listening to another episode of Mind Your Wedding Business, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you.
To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mind Your Wedding Business podcast, brought to you by Wedding IQ. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode. Please get in touch with me if you have a topic you would like for me to cover, or if you are in the area of your business you're struggling with, let us know. We'll be happy to help. I encourage you to check out our other episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're a fan, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love for you to subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. It helps others find our podcast so they can learn from our guests too. Thanks again for listening.